He pulled the chair away as I lowered myself down. The room erupted in laughter. I lay on the ground in front of my daughter's wedding guests. My name is Richard Hayes. I'm 59 years old, and that was the moment my new son-in-law decided to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved. Sit back and let me tell you how my own daughter's husband tried to make me the fool at her wedding, and how I answered humiliation with a secret that froze the music and left the whole reception in silence. Before we get too far, don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're listening from. The chair scraped across the polished floor, and my back smacked against the hard wood. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The chandelier light spun overhead, fractured in my watering eyes. Laughter bounced around the hall. Not polite chuckles. Loud, sharp laughter. His groomsmen slapped each other on the shoulders. One of them bent over, holding his stomach like a child who'd just seen a clown trip on purpose. I pushed myself up, hands burning against the floor. My jacket slipped off one shoulder, and the sleeve of my white shirt was already marked with dust from the ground. Across the table, my daughter's face had gone pale. She lifted a hand to her mouth. For a second, I thought she might stand, might shout, might tell her husband that this was no joke. But she froze, caught between shame and the weight of her veil. "Relax, Dad." The groom, Mark, spread his arms wide, as if he'd given me a gift. His teeth gleamed under the lights. "It's just a bit of fun. Don't be so serious." Fun. That word cut sharper than the fall. I stood, pulling the chair back upright myself. My knees creaked as I lowered onto it, careful this time, my hands gripping both armrests like iron. The laughter dimmed but didn't vanish. Someone coughed to hide their giggle. My ears burned. I could feel the heat crawl down my neck into my collar. The band picked up a tune again, strings and piano sliding into the air to patch over the shame. People turned back to their plates. But I sat still. My fork rested untouched against the edge of my plate. My glass of water trembled from where I'd set it down too hard. Across the table, Mark leaned close to my daughter and whispered something in her ear. She laughed, forced, tight, the kind of laugh you make when you don't know what else to do. My hands tightened around the fork until the metal bit into my palm. I felt every eye that wasn't looking at me. And I promised myself something right there. If they wanted a fool, I'd give them a performance, but one they wouldn't forget. The night stretched on, candles burning lower, glasses clinking, waiters weaving between tables with trays of lamb and salmon. The speeches came. My brother-in-law droned about loyalty. A bridesmaid cried about childhood memories. People clapped politely, their rings flashing in the dim light. Then it was my turn. I stood slow, my knees popped. My chair scraped the floor with a low growl that cut through the music. The microphone waited at the head table. My daughter's eyes darted to me, pleading, worried. Mark leaned back, smirk curling his lip. I picked up the mic. The stem was slick from other hands, but I held it firm. The room hushed, forks resting midair, eyes swinging toward me. "I wasn't sure I'd speak tonight," I said. My voice was steady, slow, carrying through the hall. "After all, I already made everyone laugh earlier, didn't I?" A ripple of chuckles. Mark's grin widened. "But," I continued, "there's something more important than laughter. There's truth, and truth is heavier than jokes." I reached into my jacket pocket. The weight of the envelope pressed against my ribs all evening, warm from my body heat. I drew it out now, the paper thick, edges creased from being folded and refolded too many times. My daughter's eyes widened. She knew that envelope. Mark's smirk flickered. The music from the band faltered, strings squeaking into silence. I placed the envelope flat on the table, right in front of me. My hand stayed on top of it, fingers spread wide like I was steadying a live thing. And the room leaned forward, every ear straining, as I began. I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were wide, wet at the edges, pleading for something she could not name. I looked at Mark. He smiled, but his lip twitched. The groomsman leaned forward, hungry for a show. I slid the envelope closer to me and tapped it once with my finger. The sound was small. Paper on wood. It carried anyway. "This is not a long speech," I said. "I will not tell old stories. I will not try to be funny. I will say one thing. Respect is not a joke. Not at a table. Not on a floor. Not in a home. If you keep it, it holds you up. If you throw it away, it will trip you when you least expect it." The room was still. The band had stopped. Forks rested on plates. No one breathed for a beat. I waited. Then I smiled at my daughter. It was a small smile, but it was real. "You look beautiful," I said. "I want you to be happy. I want your home to be safe. I want your nights to be quiet. I want your mornings to be soft. I am your father. That is all." Her mouth trembled. She nodded. A couple of guests clapped. It was the careful kind of clapping people do when they are not sure if they should. I picked up the envelope. I did not open it. I slid it back into my jacket. I put the mic on the stand. I walked back to my chair and sat down without looking at Mark. The band leader took a breath and gave a small nod. Music rose again, thin at first, then fuller. People let out the breath they held. Laughter started up at a lower volume, like a stream after a slow rain. Mark leaned in across the table. His breath smelled like sweet wine. "That was cute," he said. "But you missed your moment, old man." I looked past him at the lights on the far wall, little gold dots, soft, floating in the dim. "Moments do not miss," I said. "They line up and wait." He did not know what to do with that. He blinked. He smiled again, but it hung a little crooked this time. He clapped his hands loud once and yelled to a groomsman, "Shots!" A waiter came with a tray. Glasses clicked. Mark raised one and made a show of tipping it to his mouth, then slammed it down hard enough to make the silverware jump. He looked around to see if people watched. People did. Some smiled to be polite. Some looked away. I sipped water. The glass was cold. A slow calm spread in my chest. A hand touched my shoulder. The venue manager stood beside me. She had a black clipboard and a soft voice. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "can I borrow you for a moment?" I stood and followed her along the edge of the hall. The floor had a shine like still water. You could see your shoes in it if you looked down. I did not look down. We stepped through a side door into a small office that smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee. A string of spare lights leaned against the wall. The band's cases lined the floor. She closed the door. "I am sorry about what happened," she said. "I saw it. Many guests saw it." "I know," I said. "I wanted to ask about payments," she said. "It is not urgent, but I like to keep my list clear as the night goes. There are some open balances. Florals. Late fees for extra setup time. Overtime for the band if we go past 11. The card on file has a name that is not the groom's. I wanted to confirm it with you." She turned the clipboard around. My name sat there next to the deposits. My card. My signature. I had put them there 3 months ago when my daughter cried and said the venue she dreamed of was only a little out of reach, and Mark said he would pay it back from sales at his new business. He said it with a smile. I paid. I had not told anyone. "It is my card," I said. "Leave it. Do not charge anything new without checking with me first." She nodded. "Understood." "And one more thing," I said. "When I come to you and say the words, turn off the music. No last note. No fade. Just silence. Lights up a little. Then hand me the spare mic." Her eyes widened a fraction. She nodded once. "I will do it." I left the office and walked back through the side door. A cousin had taken the mic and was telling a story about a camping trip. People laughed. The groomsmen shouted the punchline along with him. Mark watched me cross the floor. He raised his glass. He mouthed a word that was not kind. I kept walking. At the bar, the head of the band stood with a plastic cup of water. He had lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting into lights year after year. "Sir," he said with a nod. "You see the man who pulled the chair," I said. "I do." "If I ask, can you drop your song to 0 on my mark?" He smiled. "If you ask, I can kill the room and make it sound like snow on a TV." "Not yet," I said. "Wait for me." He held out his hand to shake. His palm was dry and warm. "I wait for you," he said. I moved through the hall. People danced. The bride laughed with her friends. It was a high-light laugh. She looked over her shoulder at me for a second, then looked away. The look said, "I am sorry, and I do not know what to do." I felt it like a string pulled under my ribs. At the end of the hall, a door stood open to a short passage that led to the loading dock. Warm air moved in from outside. I stepped out under the night sky and took a breath that tasted like summer and dust from the parking lot. The moon was a pale coin stuck on the corner of the roof. A thin moth hit the light by the door and spun away. A voice came from the shadows. "Sir?" It was the bearded bartender. He held his hands out like he was not a threat. I wanted to say what he did was not right. I saw it. The staff saw it. "I know," I said. He looked down at a folded napkin in his hand. He passed it to me without touching my skin. "I think you should have this." I opened it. It was a printout of a tab, marked with a pen. Prepaid bottle service. Notes with crude words about me. Mark's name. One of the groomsmen had added a line in a small sketch like a child would draw. It was not kind. "Thank you," I said. He swallowed. "I have a mother," he said. "If a man did that to her father, I would feel a way about it." "I do feel a way about it," I said. He nodded and slipped back inside. I took another breath and went back in. The bass thumped at a low level. The floor shook a little with the steps of dancers. The smell of spilled beer and roses and wax floated together like a strange soup. I tucked the napkin in my jacket with the envelope. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I did not know popped on the screen. I opened it. A short video loaded. In the clip, shot shaky from behind a column, Mark and his groomsmen were at the head table before the reception. Mark pulled my chair out by a long inch, then another, then checked the angle and pulled again. He looked straight at the camera person and grinned with his tongue in his teeth. The clip ended with him whispering, "This will be good." A second text followed. From my daughter's maid of honor. It said, "I am sorry. I did not think he would do it." I heard him plan. I did not stop it. I freeze when people laugh. "I am sorry again. I can say this on camera if you need." My jaw set. I did not feel hot now. I felt very, very cool. Motivation thrummed in my chest like a slow drum. Not rage, not loud, a steady thing, the kind that holds a line. I looked for Mark. He was at a side table where the gifts were stacked. He was leaning on his hands, talking fast to a friend with slick hair. The friend nodded and looked at me like I was a dog tied to a post. I walked past them to the head table. I picked up a small square box wrapped in white paper and tied with blue ribbon. I turned it in my hands. The tag said, "For the bride and groom from Dad." I put it down again without opening it. I looked at the empty chair that had been my seat. I set it back under the table with care. The legs made a soft sound. I pressed it in until the edge touched the tablecloth. A shadow fell across me. The band leader stood close. He spoke soft. "You give me the mark. We will do it." I nodded. I found my daughter near the dance floor. Her hands were in her lap. Her veil had a small tear at the edge where the net had caught on a chair back. She was talking to her aunt. Her eyes were dull, like a candle after a gust. She looked up when she felt me near. For a second she was a little girl again with a scraped knee, looking up to see if I was mad. Then she was a bride again. She pushed hair behind her ear. "Dad," she said, voice small, "I did not think he would do that." "I know," I said. Everyone laughed, she said, like the words tasted bad. I laughed for a second too. I hate that I did. "You do not need to explain anything to me," I said. She looked over my shoulder at Mark. He was doing that half dance that is mostly shoulders and grin. "He said it was just a joke," she whispered. "Where did you hear that before?" I asked. She flinched. "Many times." I put my hand on her shoulder. The lace felt like paper. "Find your own steady," I said. "It may not be with a man who uses jokes like a knife." She took a shaky breath. A tear escaped. She wiped it quick with the back of her finger and smiled like a person does when a camera points at them. She nodded. "I will sit for a while," she said. I walked to the photo booth where a line of children had fake mustaches and paper hats. They looked at me and laughed in a clean way, not a cutting way. A boy held up a sign that said Best Day. I hoped it could still be true for him. The DJ called for the father-daughter dance. People clapped. The band leader looked at me. I shook my head. Not yet. He nodded and gave the band a small circle with his hand. The piano came in like a soft door opening. My daughter stood. She walked to me. We met at the center of the floor. Her hand was small in mine. The room went a little out of focus for me except for her face. We moved slow. The song was one I had played in the kitchen on Sunday mornings when she was 8 and would spin in her socks. Her cheek rested on my shoulder now. I could smell her hairspray and the faint scent of the soap she used when she was a teenager. I felt the stick of tears at the corner of my eye and blinked them back. She squeezed my hand once, like a code from long ago. As we turned, I could see Mark at the edge of the floor. He had his phone out. He was filming me. He made a face to the camera. He mouthed something like "Old man can still stand." He showed the clip to a friend who laughed. I kept my face calm. The song ended. People clapped. I walked my daughter back to her chair and kissed the top of her head. The veil brushed my lips. It felt like breath. I did not sit. I walked straight to the band leader. After the bouquet toss, I said. He gave me a short salute. I found the venue manager again and stood close so I did not have to raise my voice. Now would be a good time to gather the open tabs. She nodded and moved like a shadow through the room, speaking to 2 staff. They split and started walking table to table with black folders. I went to the head table. Mark watched me come like a man watches a small fire and wonders if it will reach his fence. He tilted his head. "Do you want another shot?" he asked. "We can toast to strong hips." "Later," I said. "Right now, go get the bouquet for your wife. It is time." He snapped his fingers at a bridesmaid and sat back in his chair like a king. She ran to get the flowers. My daughter watched with a set mouth. The crowd began to gather at the edge of the dance floor. Single women laughed and jostled for a spot. The band played a little riff. The room leaned in, happy for a harmless game. I moved to the side door again. The night pressed in. A cricket sang in a small dry voice by the step. I took the envelope from my pocket. I held it and thought of the last 3 months. The calls, the receipts, the visit with the venue manager before the wedding day, where I asked simple questions and got simple answers. Who signed for what? Who promised what? Whose name sat on the checks? I thought of the day last week when the florist called me and said, "I hate to bother you, sir, but the groom's card keeps failing for the last piece, and your name is still on file." I thought of the email from the bank that said Mark had applied for a line of credit with my daughter's name listed as a joint signer, and then the other email that said the call I made had blocked it for now due to a hold I placed. I thought of the short video of his hand on my chair, the grin to the camera, the whisper of "this will be good." I slid the envelope back into my jacket. I walked inside. The bouquet toss began. Mark shouted, "Turn around! No peeking!" My daughter stood with her back to the crowd. She swung the flowers once, twice. She threw. A cousin jumped and caught it with a squeal. People clapped. The band hit a bright note. Lights swept the ceiling. I raised my hand toward the band leader. He saw me. He nodded. His fingers flicked on his board. The music cut like a chord. Lights rose a step. The room drew a breath and held it. I walked to the center of the floor. I did not take the mic from the stand. I did not ask for it. The venue manager was already there, moving like air, placing the spare in my hand. I held it at my side for a second, then lifted it. "I promised a short speech," I said. My voice was even. I kept that promise. This is not a speech. This is a simple thing that needs to be said. I will only say what must be said. I looked at my daughter. Her hands were tight in her lap. I looked at Mark. He leaned back in his chair. He tried to look bored. His jaw worked. I held up my phone. The screen glowed. I pressed play. The video from before the reception filled the big screen behind the band. The manager had done this. She had seen the thread. She had pulled it. The image was shaky, but clear enough. Mark looked out from the screen. He pulled the chair. He grinned. He whispered, "This will be good." There was no sound in the room but the little click of someone dropping a fork. Mark stood halfway up, then sat, then stood again. He tried to laugh. It came out like a cough. I did not wait for his words. I raised my hand and the screen went black. The room stayed silent. I held up the napkin the bartender had given me. I did not read the words on it aloud. I placed it on the head table in front of Mark like a card in a game and slid it toward him with 2 fingers. "This is the last time I let anyone use me as a prop," I said. He found his voice. "It was a joke," he said. Everyone laughed. "You laughed," I said. "Your friends laughed. That is not everyone." I took the envelope from my jacket. I laid it on the table beside the napkin. I rested my hand on it for a heartbeat. Then I lifted my hand and left it there. I did not open it. Not yet. I turned to the manager. "Please hold the next song." She nodded. 2 small notes," I said to the room. "First, the balance on the venue is on my card. The band overtime is on my card. The florals are on my card. The gifts you see on the table were paid in part by a fund from my late wife that I kept for this day." The groom did not tell you that. You did not need to know. But I need to say it now so the next part makes sense. Faces turned to each other. I could hear the little gasps people make when their sense of the room tilts. "Second," I said, "I have always tried to be kind. Tonight I am still trying. Kindness sometimes looks like a clear line." I looked at my daughter. "You are free to dance," I said. "You are free to sit. You are free to think. No one owns your smile." I looked at Mark. "You are free to speak, but be careful. Words can be collected." He opened his mouth. He saw my phone in my hand. He closed it. I took a small step back. The party can go on, or not. The choice is about respect, not music. I lowered the mic. The room stayed quiet. Someone at the back clapped once, then stopped. The band leader looked at me for a sign. I did not give one. The manager looked at me. I nodded now. The lights dropped. The music rose again, soft, respectful, like a room waking from a bad dream. I walked off the floor and out to the side hall. I leaned against the cool wall and took a slow breath. I had not opened the envelope. I had not played all of my cards. Not tonight. Not yet. Mark came fast around the corner. He had 2 of his friends with him. Their shirts were open at the collar now. Their ties were loose. One had a face red from drink. The other had a smile he thought looked like a threat. Mark stopped a foot from me. "You think you are clever," he said. "You think you can make me look bad." "I did not need to help," I said. He stepped closer. "You will not ruin my night." "You did that yourself," I said. Redface laughed. "Old man has words." "Old man has receipts," I said. Slick Hair stepped in. "Careful," he said to me low. "You are alone here." I smiled a little and moved my eyes to the open door. The bandleader stood there, not on the stage, but close enough to hear. The bartender leaned on the far wall, drying a glass with a towel that did not need drying. The venue manager waited 10 feet away with her clipboard held like a shield. The security guard who had been at the front earlier stood in the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes calm. Alone is a word that depends on how you count. Mark's friends faded back like smoke. He stayed. His mouth worked. "I will talk to her," he said, meaning my daughter. "I will explain." "You should sit with her and be very quiet," I said. "Let her talk. That would be new for you." He snarled a small word under his breath and walked away. His shoulders were tight. He rolled his neck like it hurt. I stood until my breathing was slow again. I went back inside. The dance floor had a new shape. People moved, but they looked at me, and then looked at my daughter, and then looked at Mark. The laugh lines had smoothed to careful lines. The room had changed temperature. My daughter sat with her hands around a glass of water. She watched Mark from a small distance. He tried to joke with a groomsman and failed. His smile held, but only the skin moved. His eyes were busy. I sat in a chair at the edge and watched the room take its new shape. A niece came and asked me to take a photo with her. I did. A neighbor put a hand on my arm and squeezed once. The florist stopped by the table and whispered, "Thank you." The band played a soft song that did not demand anything of the feet. Any day, the rest of the night moved in slow steps. Cake. Coffee. People went home. People hugged. Some looked at me with new eyes. Some looked at me with the same eyes, and that was good too. When the last guest left, I walked the empty floor. The crew rolled up wires. The lights came on full, warm and a little harsh. The room looked like a room again. No magic. Just walls and a floor and a smell of sugar and wax. The manager met me by the door. It was the right line, she said. "Thank you," I said. She handed me a thin folder. "Copies of the charges," she said, "as you asked." I signed where she pointed. The pen made a square sound on the page. I put the folder under my arm and went out into the night. The parking lot was quiet. The moon had moved. My shoes made a dry sound on the pavement. I stopped at my car and put both hands on the roof and let my head hang for a second, like a man who has been carrying a bucket and just set it down. I got in and drove home. The house was dark. The porch light clicked on when it saw me. I went inside and set the envelope on the table. I set the folder beside it. I poured a glass of water and drank it in 3 slow pulls. I stood still and listened to the hum of the fridge. It was a small sound. It sounded like the inside of my chest. I took the recorder from the drawer. I set it on the table. I did not press record. I did not need to. The night had already written itself. In the morning, I swept the kitchen floor. A leaf had stuck to my shoe, and I had carried it in. I picked it up and set it in the trash. I made eggs. I ate them at the window. My phone buzzed. A message from my daughter. "Can I come by?" I told her yes. She came with her hair in a simple tie. She wore a sweater of mine from years ago. It had a small hole near the cuff where a nail had snagged it when I fixed a fence. She sat at the table and put her hands flat on the wood and looked at me like she did when she was 5 and had broken a cup. "I am sorry," she said. "You did not pull the chair," I said. I laughed, she said. "I hate that I did." "You are human," I said. She took a breath. "Do you have more?" she asked. Her eyes moved to the envelope. "I know you do." "I have enough," I said. She nodded. "Will you use it?" "When I need to," I said. She looked at her hands. She turned them over and looked at her palms like they might have the answer there. "I think I need to think," she said. "I think I need to sit alone and hear my own voice without his voice in my ear." "That is a good plan," I said. She reached out and put her hand on top of the envelope. She did not open it. She just left her hand there for a count of 5, then lifted it away. "I will go," she said. "Thank you for being steady." When she left, I took the envelope and slid it into a drawer. It did not make a sound. The drawer closed with a soft catch. That afternoon, the florist called again to say the final payment had gone through. The band leader sent a text that said "good luck" and a photo of his daughter in a tree at the park. The venue manager sent a copy of the video clip to my email and a note that said, "By the way, the staff pooled a tip for the bartender who gave you the napkin. He was brave." He also told me his mother would have wanted someone to stand up for her father if this had happened to him. Good night. I took a walk as the sun dropped. The sidewalk was warm. The air smelled like cut grass and rain that had not fallen yet. I passed a couple walking a dog. The dog looked up at me and wagged once. I nodded at the couple. They nodded back. I did not feel like a hero. I did not feel like a victim. I felt like a man who had set a chair under a table and made sure it would not slip again. Night came. I slept. The house did not creak much. In the morning, I awoke and the light was clear. The phone rang at 10. It was a number I knew now, the bank. I picked up and listened. I did not speak for a long time. Then I said 2 words. "Yes, understood." I hung up and looked at the drawer where the envelope sat. I did not open it. I made coffee. I watched the steam rise. I counted to 30 and poured. I sat at the table and breathed. The line had held. There was more to do. There was a final thing to say, but not yet. I waited for the right moment. And I could feel it getting close, like thunder you can feel in your feet before you hear it in your ear. The thunder I felt in my feet arrived the following weekend. It didn't come as lightning in the sky, but as a knock at my door. Firm, quick, impatient. I opened it and found Mark. His tie was missing, his shirt wrinkled. The smirk he wore at the wedding was gone. In its place was something restless, desperate. "Richard," he said, forcing my name out like it was bitter. "We need to talk." I didn't invite him in. I stood with the screen door between us. About what? His eyes darted past me, like he wanted to see if my daughter was inside. She wasn't. About the other night, about the misunderstanding. I raised an eyebrow. A misunderstanding is forgetting milk at the store. Pulling a chair out from under someone in front of 200 guests isn't a misunderstanding. His jaw twitched. "Look, it was a joke. Everyone's so sensitive these days. But that video, you can't go showing that around. You'll ruin me. My business is just getting started." Investors were there. There it was, the real fear. Not guilt, not shame, money, status. "You did that yourself," I said. He pressed his palm against the screen, close enough for me to smell the sourness of wine still clinging to him. "Delete it," he said. "Delete everything, please." Behind his plea was a demand. He still thought he could tell me what to do. "I don't delete truth," I said. For a second, rage flared in his eyes. Then it shrank into something smaller. His shoulders sagged. "If my wife leaves me because of this, it'll be your fault." I leaned closer. "If she leaves, it'll be because you chose humiliation over respect. That was your hand on the chair, not mine." He stumbled back a step, opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned and walked down the steps, each one louder than the last. His car engine barked awake and roared down the street, leaving the smell of exhaust in the quiet morning air. I closed the door, locked it, and stood in the kitchen until the hum of the fridge steadied me again. The envelope still sat in the drawer. I slid it out and placed it on the table. The seal was tight, the paper thick. I pressed my palm against it and thought of how small Mark had looked on my porch compared to how large he thought he was at the wedding. The phone rang that afternoon. My daughter's voice soft and cracked. "Dad," she said, "he's unraveling. He's blaming everyone but himself. He even said it was you who embarrassed him." "Did you believe him?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "I saw the video. I know what he did, but I don't know what to do now." "You sit still," I said. "Let him show the world what he really is. Don't defend him. Don't fight for him. Just sit still and watch." Her breath trembled in the receiver. "And you?" "I'll stand," I said. The following week, the calls began. Neighbors, business contacts, even the florist who'd done the wedding arrangements. Word spread about what happened in that hall, about the video, about the bills I had quietly paid. Some voices were sympathetic. Some were curious, some were sharp with gossip. But the story wasn't mine to protect anymore. It belonged to every eye and every ear that had seen what happened. At church, a man I barely knew shook my hand longer than usual. "You held the line," he said, voice low. I nodded. At the hardware store, the clerk slipped a folded receipt into my bag with a note scrawled in the margin. "Saw the video. Good on you." Each nod, each whisper, each quiet message was another nail in the coffin of Mark's showman smile. And still, the envelope waited. I didn't rush. I watered the yard, trimmed the hedge, swept the porch. I cooked eggs in the morning and sat by the window with coffee. I waited for the storm to gather itself fully before setting the last stone in place. It came, as I knew it would, on a Saturday evening when my daughter knocked on the door alone. Her veil was gone, her hair pulled back in a plain tie. Her hands were bare, no ring. "Dad," she whispered. I opened the door wide and stepped aside. She stepped inside like someone crossing a line they weren't sure was safe. Her eyes were swollen, red at the edges, but her back was straight. She carried no bag, no coat, just herself. I closed the door and let her stand in the middle of the living room. She looked around like the walls were trying to remind her of things. Family photos lined the shelf above the fireplace, her in pigtails, her mother smiling, me holding a bike steady on the grass. She touched one frame lightly with her fingers and pulled her hand back as if it burned. "I left," she said. Her voice was rough, but the words were clean. "He said I embarrassed him, that everyone was laughing at him, not at you. He yelled, and then he cried, and then he begged. I packed nothing. I just walked out." I nodded once. Good. She looked at me sharply, searching for anger or judgment. She found none. Her shoulders loosened. I should have stopped him at the wedding, she said. I should have said something when he pulled the chair. I froze. Most people freeze, I said. It takes time to learn how to move while everyone's eyes are on you. Tears slipped down her face. I don't know what to do now. You sit here tonight, I said. You breathe. Tomorrow, you think. That's enough. She sank onto the couch. The cushions swallowed her small frame. She curled her hands in her lap, and for the first time since she'd arrived, her breathing slowed. I went to the kitchen and brought her a glass of water. She drank half in one pull and held it tight like it anchored her. Silence settled, not heavy but steady. The house seemed to exhale with us. After a while, she spoke again. What's in the envelope, Dad? I looked at the drawer where it had lived, at the table where it now sat. I had never told her. She knew it mattered, but not what it held. Proof, I said. Proof of what? That respect isn't just a word, I said. It's numbers, it's signatures, it's receipts, it's voices caught when they thought no one listened. Her eyes widened. You kept everything? I kept enough, I said. She leaned back, silent, the weight of that truth settling over her. The next morning, I drove her back to her apartment. Mark's car was gone. The place looked the same, but quiet. She went inside, and I left her there with her thoughts. By Monday, the calls started again, this time from people closer to Mark. His uncle, his business partner, even one of his groomsmen. Each wanted to talk, to smooth things over, to ask what I planned to do with that envelope. I gave them nothing. By Thursday, the whispers had grown louder. My daughter called. He's telling people you're blackmailing him, she said. I haven't asked him for a thing, I said. I know, she whispered, but he's unraveling. That night, as the sun dipped low and painted the porch in amber light, a car pulled up. It was Mark again, alone this time. His face was pale, eyes ringed with sleepless nights. He walked up the steps, slower than before, like each one cost him something. Richard, he said. His voice cracked. Please, I'm begging you, don't show it. Don't ruin me. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You ruined yourself. His shoulders slumped. I'll change. I'll make it right. Just give me the envelope. I let the silence stretch until his breathing grew ragged. Then I spoke. It was never about the envelope. It was about you learning respect, and so far you haven't. He closed his eyes. His lips moved, like he was praying. Then he turned and stumbled down the steps, into his car, and drove away. I went back inside. The envelope sat on the table, waiting. My hand rested on it. Soon. 2 weeks passed. My daughter stayed quiet in her apartment, answering calls only from me. Word spread that she hadn't gone back to him. Some relatives whispered that she was ungrateful, that marriage vows meant endurance. Others whispered louder that humiliation wasn't something to swallow for the sake of appearances. I let them whisper. I didn't correct or defend. Truth has a way of surfacing when you leave it alone long enough. The envelope remained on my table, edges soft from my fingers brushing it each morning. It wasn't time yet. Timing mattered more than the contents. Then came the invitation, not from my daughter, not from Mark, but from his business partner. A ribbon cutting for their new storefront on Main. Bold lettering on glossy paper, the kind meant to impress. I set it down and laughed once under my breath. He still believed he had an image to protect. He still thought he could smile and bury the shame under champagne and scissors. That night, my daughter came over for dinner. She picked at her food, pushing peas across her plate. He begged me to come, she said softly. He sent flowers, notes. He said he was sick, that people were lying to him. And what do you feel? I asked. She pressed her lips tight. I feel small when he talks, like my own voice shrinks. Then don't let his voice fill the room anymore, I said. She nodded, but her eyes carried a storm. The day of the opening, I dressed in my best suit, not flashy, dark, pressed, steady. I slipped the envelope into my jacket. My daughter stayed behind. She wasn't ready. The street outside the shop was lined with balloons, a cheap band playing on the curb. Mark stood at the front, flanked by his partners. His smile stretched wide, but his eyes were hollow. Cameras flashed. Guests clapped. When he spotted me in the crowd, the color drained from his face. His hand trembled on the ribbon. I stepped forward as they lifted the oversized scissors. The band faltered, their tune sour. Conversations dipped. "Before you cut that ribbon," I said, my voice carrying over the crowd, "there's something that belongs to all of you." Every head turned. Mark froze. His partners glanced at him, confused. I pulled the envelope from my jacket and held it high. The seal gleamed in the sunlight. Inside this envelope are the records. Payments I made, bills he dodged, notes he left, proof of what respect looks like, and what happens when it's thrown away. A ripple went through the crowd. Phones lifted. Cameras clicked faster. Mark's smile shattered. "Stop," he hissed. "Don't you dare." I opened the flap. Paper slid into my hand. Receipts with his name crossed out. Bills unpaid. The florist's note. The video stills of him whispering, "This will be good." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. This man pulled a chair out from under me at his own wedding to humiliate me. He laughed. His friends laughed. And then he let me pay for everything he promised. Every flower, every note of music, every wall of that hall. Respect is not a joke. And today, you should know the truth before you cut that ribbon. The silence broke like glass. Gasps, murmurs. Someone shouted, "Is that true?" Others turned their cameras straight on Mark. His partners stepped back, away from him. One dropped the scissors to the pavement with a clang. Mark tried to speak, but the words stuck. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Sweat rolled down his temple. I placed the papers on a small table near the ribbon. The wind fluttered them like white flags no one had chosen to raise. And then I stepped aside, hands calm at my sides. "You may still cut your ribbon," I said, "but now it won't be with clean hands." The band stopped altogether. Guests began to drift back, shaking their heads, whispering to each other. Mark stood frozen, scissors hanging useless at his side. I turned and walked away. Behind me, the street buzzed with the sound of a man's image collapsing. At home, my daughter was waiting on the porch. When she saw my face, she didn't ask what happened. She just reached out and squeezed my arm. Her hand was steady. The porch light glowed soft against my daughter's face. She looked at me with that searching gaze she had as a child, waiting for the truth to come in a steady stream, not as a rush that drowned her. "Did they see?" she asked. "They saw," I said. "And him?" He stood with scissors in his hand and couldn't cut the air in front of him. That was enough. Her shoulders dropped. For the first time since the wedding, I saw relief flicker across her face. Not bright, but real. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the night. The crickets, the distant hum of traffic, the creak of the porch boards under our weight. I thought of her mother, how she used to say silence was the only music that told the truth. Tonight, it sounded right. The next morning, the papers carried the story. Not because of me, but because someone in the crowd had filmed it. Headlines didn't use my name, only his. Local entrepreneur faces backlash over wedding prank, unpaid debts revealed at store opening. His photo sat there, eyes wide, sweat on his brow, papers fluttering beside him like ghosts. By noon, his investors had withdrawn. By evening, the storefront was dark. He called me once, just once. His voice was a broken wire. "You ruined me." "No," I said. "You pulled the chair. You laughed. You ruined yourself." I hung up and let the silence sit between us forever. My daughter came home the next week with 2 bags and nothing more. She left the ring on my kitchen table without ceremony. It looked small there, a circle that meant nothing now. She said she was ready to start again, and for the first time in years her voice sounded like her own. Life steadied after that. We cooked simple meals. We walked the block at dusk. She began to laugh again, not forced, but from her chest. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the street gold, she asked, "Dad, why didn't you open that envelope at the wedding?" I thought of the envelope lying in the drawer, edges worn, papers inside still sharp. I smiled a little, because respect means more when it's revealed at the right time. Not for anger, not for applause, for truth. She nodded, her hand brushing mine. "You taught me that," she whispered. The house was quiet again. No laughter sharp as knives. No chair pulled from under me. Just the hum of the fridge, the sigh of the trees, the sound of a daughter finding her voice again. And that was enough. The music had stopped for him. For us, life carried on, steady and unbroken. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe and join Taste of Revenge family, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on one of the boxes on the right. Thank you for watching to the end.